Welcome to the debate. So, if you are listening to this on your commute right now, or maybe you are sitting at your kitchen island dreading the moment you have to actually open your laptop, I want you to imagine a scenario.
Oh, I think a lot of people are going to relate to this one.
Yeah, definitely. So, picture this. You are in your early 30s. You just got married. And you are pregnant with your first child. You have spent the last decade doing exactly what you were supposed to do, right? You got the degrees, you earned the certifications, you worked the late nights, and you successfully climbed the corporate ladder.
Right. The whole blueprint.
Exactly, the blueprint. You have built a life of total stability, and yet you suddenly realize you absolutely despise the career you spent all that time building. I mean, you describe this success as a prison where your soul is no longer present.
Man, that is a staggering realization for anyone to have. But the material reality here is what really makes it so sharp. Her husband drives for Uber, which operates entirely in the gig economy.
Right, so no guarantees there.
Exactly. No guarantees. That means her corporate paycheck is the financial bedrock of the house. It covers the vast majority of their bills. So the tension is just immense. She is the primary breadwinner, she is pregnant, and she is profoundly disconnected from the very work that keeps her family afloat.
Yeah. And faced with that crushing reality, she makes a very deliberate choice. She decides not to quit. Instead, she opts to slowly, methodically build a side business, focusing on web design, artificial intelligence, branding, all in her after hours.
The classic side hustle?
Right. She frames this gradual transition as building a bridge before you burn the old one. And this specific strategy, this incrementalism, is really where our perspectives fundamentally diverge today. I look at her choice to stay while building on the side, and I see the absolute highest form of practical wisdom. It is a masterclass in balancing ethical responsibility with a genuine drive for self-actualization.
Yeah. Well, I come at it from a very different way. While she explicitly claims to be choosing wisdom over fear, and, while society loves to celebrate this kind of hustle culture approach, her bridge-building strategy operates functionally as a highly sophisticated rationalization of fear.
Oh, rationalization?
Oh, absolutely. It fundamentally misunderstands how true career transitions and identity shifts actually occur in human psychology. And frankly, it sets her up for a completely impossible standard.
I mean, let's really look at the concrete reality of her situation now. She is pregnant. Diapers, mortgages, healthcare premiums, these are not abstract concepts. They are relentless mathematical realities.
Well, sure, they're real. Her choice to remain in her stable job while building her passions at night, it's a triumph of mature, evidence-based reasoning. As she rightly observes, passion doesn't automatically pay the mortgage. By choosing to prepare, by creating options in the background, rather than making some dramatic, cinematic leap into the void, she is honoring her concrete responsibilities. She isn't settling for a life of misery, she is strategically architecting a sustainable exit. But look at the sheer weight of what she is asking of herself, relegating the very work that actually makes her, as she says, feel alive, the branding, the systems design, the AI learning, to exhausting, unpaid overtime. That sets a practically impossible benchmark.
I wouldn't say impossible.
Think about what her life is actually going to look like. She wants to be a perfect corporate employee by day, a supportive partner, a new mother to a newborn infant, and a startup founder from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That isn't a sustainable exit strategy. I mean, that is a recipe for catastrophic burnout.
It's definitely a heavy load, yeah.
Right. True paradigm shifts in our identity rarely, if ever, happen without fully stepping into the uncertainty she is so desperately trying to engineer her way out of.
I think we have to unpack what responsibility actually means here, especially because her pregnancy is the catalyst for this entire existential crisis.
Right. She asks herself two incredibly poignant questions. She says, what kind of woman do I want my child to see? And what do I want my baby to think work is supposed to feel like? If we examine those questions honestly, staying in a job she actively dreads models a soul-crushing definition of adulthood for that child.
Well,
We know that we transmit our physiological states to our children. If a mother wakes up every single day dreading the opening of a laptop, suppressing her soul's vitality to endure 8 to 10 hours of disconnection, that physiological state becomes the child's baseline.
you're talking about like cortisol levels, the subtle resentment, the exhaustion.
Exactly. Kids don't listen to our lectures about chasing dreams, they absorb our daily reality. If her daily reality is quiet desperation, that becomes the child's understanding of what it means to be a responsible adult. She is actively modeling that survival requires the sacrifice of joy. She is teaching her child that you have to sell your soul to pay the bills.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. You are focusing heavily on the emotional modeling, which, is a valid psychological concern, but you are completely dismissing the environmental modeling.
How do you mean?
Let me give you an analogy. Think of her primary income, her financial stability, as a deep-sea diver's oxygen line. When you are 200 feet underwater and you suddenly realize you want to swim freely in a different direction, you do not sever the hose in a burst of self-actualization. You secure a secondary air source first.
But what if that air supply is toxic? She literally calls her job a prison.
It might be restrictive, but it is keeping her alive. You cannot model authentic joy for a child if the family is drowning in the acute physiological stress of losing their primary income. Poverty or even severe financial instability introduces a level of ambient trauma into a household.
Yeah, financial stress is real. I'm not denying that.
Right. When a family doesn't know how rent is getting paid, the cortisol spike from that panic will completely override whatever positive modeling comes from a parent pursuing their passion. The panic of eviction is far more damaging to a child's nervous system than a mother who finds her day job tedious. By holding onto that oxygen line, she is ensuring her family doesn't experience that trauma.
I mean, I'm not advocating for a reckless abandonment of financial duty where they end up facing eviction, but we have to look honestly at the psychological weight of what she is attempting with this bridge. She is trying to exist in two completely different realities. The current air supply is slowly poisoning her sense of self. It is a slow drain.
But she is actively dismantling that prison by building the side business. That is the psychological brilliance of her approach. We talk a lot in modern society about identity enmeshment, how knowledge workers conflate who they are with their LinkedIn title.
Oh, heavily, yeah.
Your entire social circle, your daily routine, your sense of competence, it all gets tied to this one corporation. She is actively breaking that enmeshment. She explicitly asks herself, if they took my job away tomorrow, who would I be? And she realizes she has to build an answer to that question before she can leave. By losing track of time, building websites, and learning AI at night, she is cultivating an identity completely independent of her corporate overlords.
Cultivating an identity, sure. But is she actually preparing to leave, or is she just decorating the walls of her prison to make it more bearable?
Decorating the walls? How so? I mean, she is learning highly marketable skills.
Look closely at her pattern of behavior. She spent her entire 20s chasing promotions, accumulating certifications, and seeking external recognition to build a life that she now admits feels entirely alien to her. She fell into the classic trap of letting external validation dictate her path. Now she looks at entrepreneurship. She rightfully observes that society only celebrates the entrepreneur after they are successful.
Right, the survivor bias.
Exactly. We love the survivor bias stories of the billionaire who made it, but we ignore the agonizing months or years of uncertainty, the messy middle where you don't know if you're going to make it.
Which is exactly why she is trying to mitigate that messy middle.
But she's trying to bypass it entirely. Paradoxically, she is applying the exact same rigid perfectionist metric that trapped her in the corporate world to her new passion. She wants the new identity, but she wants it perfectly sanitized of all risk.
I think that's a bit harsh.
By demanding that her side business seamlessly and perfectly replace her corporate income before she leaps, she is demanding the impossible. She wants a guarantee. But true entrepreneurship, true identity transformation, requires a tolerance for ambiguity. You cannot become a fundamentally new person while clinging desperately to all the safety mechanisms of the old one.
See, that actually brings up exactly why her incremental approach is so vital. I don't see it as her demanding a perfectly sanitized, risk-free transition. I see it as respecting the mathematical reality of her overhead. Let's look at the neuroscience of what she's experiencing. When she says she loses track of time designing systems and creating things without being forced to, she is describing a flow state.
Yes, a state of deep immersion.
Exactly. Flow state suppresses the default mode network in the brain. It quiets the inner critic. Psychologically, engaging in that flow state without the immediate crushing pressure of it needing to pay for her child's healthcare allows the passion to actually develop organically.
Okay, but
If she were to sever the oxygen line today, that beautiful flow state she experiences with AI and branding would immediately become a high-stakes stressor. It would literally become the only thing standing between her family and financial ruin. That kind of pressure kills creativity faster than any corporate job.
But creativity doesn't just die from pressure. It dies from starvation. And she is starving her actual passion of the time and energy it needs to thrive. Think about the reality of a Tuesday night, let's say, 6 months from now. She has a newborn. The baby is crying. She has just worked 10 hours at a job she calls a prison.
It's going to be tough, obviously.
Tough is an understatement. The idea that she will slowly and comfortably scale a web design and AI branding business during the fragmented, sleep-deprived hours of early motherhood is arguably more delusional than just quitting. The bridge she is building is fundamentally precarious because its foundation is unpaid overtime from someone who is already depleted.
That exhaustion is real, but it highlights the central thesis of her entire narrative. She reaches what I think is a profound breakthrough. She says wisdom isn't about making emotional decisions. In our culture, we are constantly force-fed this romanticized narrative of, leap and the net will appear.
Right. Follow your bliss.
Just follow your bliss and the universe will catch you. It's terrible advice for a pregnant primary breadwinner.
It is terrible advice, yeah, but that doesn't make her alternative strategy flawless.
Her strategy is grounded in executive function. She realizes she doesn't have to choose between the binary of crippling fear on one hand and reckless courage on the other. She can choose preparation. Think about the brain mechanics here. Financial panic triggers the amygdala, the fight-or-flight center. The amygdala screams, "Don't move or you'll starve."
Right.
What she is doing by building a spreadsheet, by learning AI at 9 p.m., is engaging her prefrontal cortex. She is using structured planning to soothe the amygdala. By choosing to prepare quietly, she is methodically becoming a person who won't need permission to quit when the math finally makes sense.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. The human mind, especially a highly educated, highly capable mind like hers, is exceptionally skilled at dressing up fear in the tailored suit of wisdom.
So you think her prudence, her executive function, is just an elaborate facade?
I think she is being honest with us, but she might not be entirely honest with herself. Listen to her own timeline. She says, maybe not this year, maybe after maternity leave, maybe when the business can replace my income. Do you hear how those goalposts keep shifting?
It sounds like adaptive planning based on a very volatile situation.
To me, it sounds like a comforting illusion. Waiting until a side hustle completely eclipses a primary corporate salary, while only working on it for a few exhausted hours a week, is a virtually impossible benchmark. It allows her to feel the dopamine hit of taking action. She gets to build websites at midnight and feel like an entrepreneur, without ever actually taking the structural risk required to shift her life.
I wouldn't call it an illusion.
Crazy. What if I'm being irresponsible? Her bridge strategy allows her to avoid confronting those exact fears under the highly respectable guise of prudence.
I am just not convinced by that line of reasoning because it assumes that taking a massive structural risk is the only valid mechanism for authentic change. You seem to be demanding a theatrical leap of faith here. You're suggesting that unless she experiences the sheer terror of freefall, her transition isn't real. But why must transformation require trauma?
It's not about demanding trauma. It's about acknowledging reality.
But she rightly critiques society for ignoring the agonizing months of uncertainty that entrepreneurs face. If she has the intellect and the discipline to mitigate that uncertainty through strategic diligence, why shouldn't she? Why should she suffer just to prove she is committed to her new identity?
Because the uncertainty is where the identity shift actually happens. The corporate identity she desperately wants to shed is actively maintained by the very salary she refuses to let go of. Look at her husband. He drives Uber. He operates entirely in the gig economy. There is an inherent adaptability and resilience required there because nothing is guaranteed.
Exactly, which is why she has to be the anchor.
But she is clinging to an illusion of permanence. Corporate jobs are not guaranteed. They feel incredibly safe right up until the Tuesday morning when there's a mass layoff and your keycard just stops working. She is choosing the slow, guaranteed soul drain of a job she hates over the sharp, temporary discomfort of uncertainty that might actually set her free.
But again, the discomfort wouldn't just be hers. It would be her husband's, and it would be her newborn baby's. That is the ethical anchor of this entire debate. When you are the primary breadwinner, your risk tolerance can no longer be a purely individual calculus. It is a collective equation.
That's true.
By building the bridge, even if the goalposts occasionally move, she's actively mitigating the collateral damage of her own existential awakening. She's ensuring that her pursuit of personal fulfillment does not become her family's financial crisis. She correctly identifies that a responsible mother does not gamble the family income simply because she feels uninspired by a spreadsheet.
I agree that the calculus is collective, but the cost of her staying is also collective, and that's what is being ignored here. If she becomes a hollowed-out, cynical version of herself, exhausted from working a day job she hates and a night job she loves, her family pays the price of that exhaustion. The bridge strategy demands double the energy from a woman who is already describing herself as fundamentally drained.
But she specifically notes that the night work doesn't drain her. It energizes her. She says, nobody has to force me, nobody has to pay me overtime. That's when I feel alive. She is tapping into a completely different energy reserve. It isn't drawing from the same well as her corporate job.
For now, she is in the honeymoon phase of learning AI and designing systems. It's purely creative right now. But what happens when that side business requires client acquisition, handling demanding customer complaints, and managing quarterly self-employment taxes?
Well, every business has that.
Exactly. When the passion project becomes actual grinding work, that magical secondary energy reserve will deplete very quickly. And when it does, she will be left trying to cross a bridge that is only half built, holding a baby in one arm and a corporate laptop in the other.
Let's pull back for a second and look at where we've arrived, because the contrast in how we view her strategy is really stark. My position remains that her pragmatic preparation is the optimal path through a nearly impossible situation. She is perfectly balancing her duty as the primary provider with a very real, very urgent drive for personal fulfillment.
I hear you, but
she recognizes that she has outgrown the perfectly constructed life she built, but she is taking the mature, measured time to secure a new foundation before she demolishes the current one. That is the definition of wisdom.
in my view remains that her incrementalism, while incredibly comforting and, widely celebrated by society, ultimately traps her in the very fear she claims to be overcoming. By setting the impossibly high benchmark of a perfectly built bridge before she is willing to leave, she is virtually guaranteeing she will remain in the prison of her current success. She is mistaking the indefinite delay of a hard decision for the intelligent management of risk.
Despite that deep disagreement on her methodology, I think we have found a profound point of convergence in our analysis today. We both seem to agree wholeheartedly with her revelation regarding identity and self-worth.
Oh, absolutely. Her realization that a human being's worth must not be inextricably tied to a corporate title, a prestigious company, or a high salary is a vital psychological breakthrough. It is arguably the defining struggle of the modern knowledge worker. The moment she steps back and asks, if they took my job away tomorrow, who would I actually be? She strikes right at the heart of the dilemma.
Yeah. We also clearly agree that true fulfillment comes from work that energizes rather than drains, work that induces that flow state where you lose track of time because you are so deeply aligned with the task. Her ability to identify what actually makes her feel alive, even in the midst of her burnout, is a massive victory in itself.
Definitely.
Many people spend their entire lives in careers they hate without ever realizing they have the capacity, let alone the permission, to design something else.
That's entirely true. The awareness is always the necessary first step, even if we deeply disagree on the mechanics of what she should do with that awareness. The tension between the stability we absolutely need to survive and the authenticity we need to actually thrive is an incredibly complex reality. There are just no clean, binary answers when a mortgage and dependence are involved.
Which is why analyzing how societal definitions of success complicate our personal fulfillment is so critical. We are taught from a very young age to relentlessly acquire stability, to get the degree and the promotion. But we are rarely taught how to pivot when that stability eventually becomes suffocating.
Precisely. We are left to navigate the murky waters of transition entirely alone, often questioning our own sanity for wanting to leave a situation that looks absolutely perfect from the outside.
It brings us right back to the central tension of her story. She has built the stable life, and she has realized she doesn't want to live inside it anymore. The question remains, is the bridge she is painstakingly building in the midnight hours a genuine mathematical path to freedom? Or is it just an intricate psychological illusion designed to keep her safe from the unknown? We will leave it to you, the listener, to decide whether her approach represents true, grounded wisdom or beautifully disguised fear. There is certainly much more to explore in how we balance the weight of our duties with the urgency of our desires. Thank you for joining us on this